This is Matthew in Chicago, and you are listening to Two Broads Talking Politics.
Hi everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I am on in this segment with Mary Gay Scanlon, who is the Democratic nominee for Congress in the Pennsylvania 5th District. Hi Mary Gay.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. So could we start with just a little bit of background, who you are and why you're running for Congress this year?
Sure. I am a public interest attorney in the Philadelphia suburbs. I've worked in Philly since I graduated from law school. I have held a number of jobs there, but I really got my start in public interest work by volunteering with legal services agencies to represent children in our abuse and neglect system. And I've always had a strong interest in, issues affecting kids. So I went on to work for a nonprofit that focused on trying to provide a good public school education for every child in the state. And that led to me running for our school board. So I served about a decade on our school board. And then the last 15 years, I've been the pro bono counsel for a large national law firm where I lead and organize the free legal services that we provide. And it's a mix of working with legal aid agencies to, expand the work that they can do by representing folks who can't afford a lawyer, and then working with nonprofits that try to make communities a better place. And that stretches across the country. The law firm has offices in 15 different cities.
All right. And I'm trying to get a little bit of a sense of this district. So all of the Pennsylvania districts have been redrawn. And so the old 5th district doesn't seem to have much of anything to do with the new 5th district. So what does this district encompass?
Okay. So, we've had a little bit of a constitutional crisis here in Pennsylvania this year. So I've lived in the Philadelphia suburbs for the last 24 years. And although I've only lived in one house, that means I've lived in 3 different congressional districts because of gerrymandering. Okay. So it used to be the 7th district, and it's centered in Delaware County, which is where just southwest of the city, and it's where the airport is, if you're trying to get a grasp of exactly where it is. So the old 7th is now essentially the new 5th. But the district that just got redistricted was known as Goofy Kicking Donald because it was so gerrymandered. It looked like a Disney cartoon. So that district, went dozens of miles in each direction. It went halfway across the state and halfway up the state, just trying to get enough Republican voters into it to create a reliably gerrymandered Republican district. The new district is all of Delaware County, and it's part of South Philly. So it has like sports stadiums and the port and the airport and a number of kind of important economic engines in it.
So you are on November 6th on the ballot for the new 5th and a special election for the old 7th.
So, yes, there are 2 of us in Pennsylvania who have this crazy situation right now. Both of us are running in an old gerrymandered district because congressmen have resigned in those districts. And then we're simultaneously running in a new ungerrymandered district. So both of us are in the situation that if we, can win both the old and the new district on the same day, we'll serve the old district until the end of this year, and then the new district picks up.
Okay. And that must create some messaging headaches when you're talking to constituents.
Absolutely. People are so confused, but it's really just filling out the remainder of one term for the end of this year and then picking up in a new term next year. Probably the biggest challenge is that they aren't the same districts.
So what are some of the issues that you're hearing about as you're talking to people around the district that they're concerned about right now?
I mean, most of the issues that we're hearing about are real kitchen table issues. People are very concerned about things that, affect their families and affect their finances. healthcare has to be number one. People are very concerned about what's going to happen with their healthcare, particularly folks with pre-existing conditions. So that's probably number one. We also hear a lot about education. Really it all seems to come back to, are their families going to be okay? Are their kids going to be better off than they were? So that affects education, student loans. How are their futures going to be? Are their kids going to be more economically successful? And then again, coming back to families, we're hearing a lot about gun control issues.
Yeah, we've spoken to several people now in this area of Pennsylvania in the southeastern quadrant there, and we're hearing that a lot, that's a really big issue in the region.
I think it's a combination. I mean, the suburban moms tend to be looking at the news and hearing about these mass shootings and being really concerned, could this invade my school? Could this invade my church or my movie theater? And the kids are all over it now. So high school students are organizing, and Pennsylvania has registered more young voters this year, young adults aged 18 to 25 than any other state. And a lot of that's coming out of the March for Our Lives movement. But we've also got, the gun violence that occurs in poorer neighborhoods. And there's a couple regions like that in the district I'm running in, where it's everyday gun violence, it's handgun violence, it's violence associated with crime that is taking lives. And in fact, we were at a talking session this morning where there was a woman there with her grandson, and the one question she wanted to know is, what are we going to do about it? She's there with her grandson because her son was killed with gun violence. She said her best friend has lost 4 children to gun violence. So it's just on people's minds that we have to do something.
So you have worked for, children and families, and you yourself are a mom. What are some of the things that you think Congress really needs to be focusing on in that regard? What are the issues, beyond sort of the kitchen table? What are the things that are, sort of really deeply troubling right now?
I mean, I'm coming to this as a lawyer and someone who's been working on voting rights issues for a long time. And I come to it on a sort of a foundational viewpoint that if our electoral system isn't working, then nothing else is going to work. If we don't have a reflective democracy because of modern day voter suppression techniques, then we're not really going to make progress on anything else. So I'm really concerned about campaign finance reform. I'm concerned about making sure that everyone who is eligible to vote is able to do so. Concerned about the fact that we've got a Department of Justice right now that is not combating election violations, whether it's gerrymandering or strict voter ID. So that's one of the first things that gets me into this. But it's about having a Congress that fulfills its duty to be a check and balance on the other branches of government and actually to work on behalf of families and legislate on behalf of families.
I saw a video, I believe it was before the primary, where Ed Rendell called you Donald Trump's worst nightmare.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think it has something to do with persistence and smart women who don't like what he has to say.
Yeah. So what are the kinds of things, the kinds of events you talked about, Talking Stop this morning? What are the sorts of things you're focusing on in those final few weeks before the election?
In the final few weeks before the election, it feels like be everywhere, do everything. Because we had this gerrymandering decision, we didn't know what the district was here until the middle of February. So it's really been a race to get to see everyone throughout the district. And we've been doing it different ways. So going to meet and greets, going to forums throughout the area. We did 18 forums during the primary alone. We had a day, September 16th, we kind of kicked off our fall campaign. We called it 10K for Mary Gay because I have been a runner, and the goal was to knock on 10,000 doors in one day. And we combined that with, starting with a church breakfast in one part of the district and then making our way around the district, meeting with various people. And then we finished up with a big rally with a string band and, sort of a typical South Philly barbecue. at the end of the day. And we hit not 10,000 doors. We ended up hitting 17,000 doors that day.
That's exciting. Do you think that there's increased energy this year around voting? Are the people at the doors receptive?
Absolutely. I think there just seems to be such a sense that we need to take our country back, that we've gone off the rails a bit, that people are tired of the lack of civility, that they want government to work for them. They're tired of, politicians who aren't listening. So I'm out there listening, trying to take what we hear and put it into the priorities for action. And we are hearing people at the doors saying, I've been an independent, or I haven't voted, or I've been a Republican, but you know what, this year I have to go out and I have to vote, and I'm voting Democrat.
I've been really impressed in your region of Pennsylvania how many really strong women are running sort of up and down the ticket, but also how much people are working together, are saying, hey, there's no need for us all to do this separately when we can sort of join forces. Are you experiencing some of that camaraderie and teamwork?
Absolutely, and probably three different ways. I mean, one is, we had a pretty rambunctious primary here. We had 16 people filed to run for the congressional district, and I think, a few dropped out along the way, but we still had 10 on the ballot. But folks have really worked together since then. So every single person on the ballot with me, we've done events together, we've canvassed together, we've done meet and greets together. So there's been just a coalescing of support from post-primary with the people who ran against each other in the primary, but are now running together and being supportive. So that's one way. The second way is we have 4 women from southeastern Pennsylvania who are running on the ballot. And right now, Pennsylvania's congressional delegation, which is 18 seats in the House of Representatives and 2 in the Senate, there are no women in our congressional delegation. There haven't been since 2015, and there's only been 7 women ever in our delegation. So to have 4 women in this region alone on the ballot for the Democrats is just great. And we're doing a lot of appearances together. We have a text group where we share the trials and tribulations of being on the campaign trail. And so that's a great level of support. And then the third thing is the candidates up and down the ballot working together. So we've got a coordinated campaign. Everyone who's running for state house and state senate in this region is working together. We're canvassing together. We're sharing resources. And it's just great. It's been really, really helpful. As you said, there's a ton of energy, and it's not just the traditional politicos who are supplying that energy. We've got college students, we've got high school students, we've got, folks who really just had checked out of the political process or had never been engaged, but they realize now how important it is, and they're coming out and they're helping however they can.
What are you expecting if you're elected? And let's not say the special election, because presumably 1 or 2 seats isn't going to change that much in what happens the rest of this year. But if Democrats manage to take back the House and there's this whole new sort of cohort of people, what are you expecting to be sort of the first couple things that the new Congress is really focused on?
Well, there's been a big focus already. There's 107 of us have signed on to a pledge with Citizens United to make electoral reform and good government the first priority, because there has been an erosion of faith in our government that we need to address. So that's a big priority. I mean, the damage to the Affordable Care Act is probably going to be pretty high up there, because that is an issue that's just affecting everyone, their health care. And, can they have a doctor when they need one? So I would suspect that those 2 things are going to be pretty high up, depending on what's happened in the interim. It's been such a year and a half of just crazy things happening every news cycle. And there's some real concern about what could happen during the lame duck session. I mean, the Violence Against Women Act hasn't been reauthorized yet. That expired at the end of September. There's been an agriculture bill outstanding for months that hasn't been resolved, and that affects food stamps, which is such a big concern in the region I'm running in. It's been over a year since we had a number of resignations from Congress with Me Too issues, including the district where I'm running in a special election. And the House and the Senate have both passed legislation to address their own conduct, but it's not law yet because the leadership won't bring it to the floor. So there's so much work to be done.
Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talk about?
It's been so wonderful to see so many women getting involved in the process, whether they're running for office or whether, they're supporting other candidates, raising money, knocking doors. It's really, really necessary. Even if every woman running this year is successful, we're still going to be well below 50% of the Congress. And we need that perspective. We need women stepping up to provide their perspective because it's different. Our Congress is going to be stronger if we have more representation. So I think that's really important. That and the fact that every person's vote matters.
If our listeners would like to help your campaign out, how can they do that?
We have a robust website and social media platform. Just look for us at scanlonforcongress.com.
All right, excellent. We'll put the link up for that on our website as well. So thank you so much for speaking with me. I think I had mentioned in the email this was requested by our listeners, and it was a pleasure to speak with you and get to know you.
Oh, well, that's great. I really appreciate your calling. That was fun.
I'm here in this segment with Dr. Kyle Horton. She is running for Congress in North Carolina in the 7th District. Hi, Kyle.
Hi, happy to be here.
Yeah, thrilled to be talking with you. Let's start with just background. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for Congress this year.
Yeah, I'm an internal medicine doctor, and I have worked for a number of years in the VA healthcare system. I even stayed on as teaching faculty to train the next generation of physicians to do a better job taking care of veterans. And unfortunately, I near tragically lost patients of mine to delays in care, including some that attempted suicide, unfortunately, while they were awaiting getting integrated into mental health care. And as an MD, MBA, I had worked on trying to improve the VA healthcare system. And there was one day that my boss offered, well, I don't know, Kyle, it's going to take an act of Congress to improve care for our veterans. And I think that was really my aha moment, that we have got to do a better job at fulfilling our sacred obligation to care for veterans. And more broadly, as a physician, as we're looking at cuts to Medicare and Medicaid now, and people are really struggling paycheck to paycheck, I really want to create a safety net in healthcare that ensures that in the wealthiest nation in the world, people can count on healthcare being for them, and to really create an economy that works for all Americans and that reflects our patriotic American values, that we should really be the land of opportunity.
And so tell me a little bit about the 7th District in North Carolina. Whereabouts is this? And, what's the district kind of like?
Yeah, so I live south of Wilmington, North Carolina, and I live in a small coastal community, but our district is geographically very large. We stretch all the way up almost to Raleigh, North Carolina, which is the state capital, and we have a really diverse district. It's, we have anything from hospitality and tourism, fishing and recreation on the coast. And then as you get in closer to Raleigh, we have, tech jobs and people that are in the Triangle area that is one of the highest concentrations of PhDs in the country. And then in between, we have a lot of folks that are in agriculture that have been hit very hard by the tariffs and are deeply concerned about, in the wake of, we just faced Hurricane Florence. We've had people that never recovered from Hurricane Matthew a couple years back and got hit again, and they're losing and risking their livelihood with crops like soybeans and tobacco in particular here in eastern North Carolina. So it's a wonderful place to live, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, but it's a wide-ranging and large district.
So it looks like this district was a Democratic stronghold for a very long time and then flipped about 2 cycles ago. and then has been voting kind of heavily Republican. So what are you seeing going on in the district?
Yeah, our district was a Democratic stronghold since Reconstruction. And then a lot of people have been, disenfranchised. We have not had a lot of job growth, and coming out of the recession. And now, as we've seen, agriculture investment has not been what it used to be, and the safety net isn't what it should be. If you haven't seen lately, Congress did not reconcile the Farm Bill, and people are struggling. So I think what's happened is that we're seeing frustrations, and over several cycles, if people don't really campaign and connect with people on pocketbook issues that matter to their lives, then they get frustrated and they vote for change. And sometimes it's not the best circumstance to actually reflect what they need or improving the economy. And so, my opponent has got in there, but he really is on the wrong side of many policies that would help people in our district. For example, he opposed Medicaid expansion when he was in the state Senate. And now, again, North Carolina is a state that didn't expand Medicaid, and he voted for the AHCA and has been hell-bent on repealing the ACA. Well, next year, premiums in our district for healthcare are anticipated to go up by about 25%, and several of our rural hospitals are at risk of closure.
So it looks like this district has never been represented by a woman, and this is a district that's been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the importance of having more women in Congress.
Yeah, you are right that the 7th Congressional District has never been represented by a woman. I would be the first Congresswoman representing this district. And we also have a little bit of a shot to make history, too. The only Democratic woman doctor that was ever in Congress was Donna Christensen, who represented the Virgin Islands. And she was an at-large member, so she wasn't conventionally able to serve on committees. So I think it's a great moment in which, we had 16 men on the Senate side making decisions about health care. And by 20 points in our district, when we did a poll, folks want more women in Congress. And I think it's because women often are caretakers in their families. We're used to multitasking. We have a caring, compassionate, and responsive style to leadership. And I think that's what's coming across to people and why they want more women in Congress. We're now, I think, 103rd in the world for the women in parliament rankings when they look at the percentage of women in the parliamentary or in our case, congressional body. I mean, that's terrible. We're behind countries like the United Arab Emirates and Afghanistan and China. And so I think there's a lot of people that want practical, smart women, and particularly women like me who have worked across the aisle, who really are willing to put egos aside and compromise to do what's right for our families and for our health and well-being.
So as you go around and you're talking to people in the district, what are the kinds of things that you're hearing from them?
Yeah, there's a whole host of issues. Obviously, we are dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Florence. And so a lot of our infrastructure, as many folks recognize, as many as 60% of roads, bridges, and dams in this country are rated as structurally deficient, and many did not hold up in the storm. And we were flooded with what ended up being basically a toxic sludge of coal ash. And then we had hog waste from lagoons overflow and wastewater treatment plants overflow that risked drinking water and flooded our homes in a way that was unsafe. And we've had water contamination, unfortunately, from a DuPont plant with a potential cancer-causing agent. So the top things that we're hearing on people's minds are, how do we weather storms better? How do we protect our drinking water for our families? Because as this cancer-causing agent is in our water, moms are worried about, and questioning the safety of the water that they're putting in their kids' sippy cups. And I don't think anyone should feel like their kids are guinea pigs at the hands of a Fortune 500 company. And they're also really concerned about healthcare because, as we talked about, affordability and as many as about a third of Americans in any given year won't fill a prescription because they can't afford it. And I've certainly seen that as a primary care doctor. People really want to make sure that they can afford quality health care for their family to keep their kids and, parents and our seniors safe.
What are the kinds of events and strategies you have in this last little bit of time? So as this episode goes up, it's the day before early voting starts in North Carolina. So what are the kinds of things you're really focusing on to get to the voters?
Yeah, so we have run a really accessible and transparent campaign, and I think that's been really unique. My opponent has only done one town hall meeting last year that was an actual in-person town hall, and then he did one telephone town hall, and he's hosted very few public meetings at all. But what we have been doing is running a grassroots campaign where we have done now 14 town halls, and we have a veterans town hall coming up soon on the USS North Carolina battleship to highlight my experience as a VA physician, but more importantly, to hear from veterans who have been suffering as the waits have been as long as they have. But we are really working on rallies and getting out to the polls. And then we've been meeting voters where they are, which means that we have been knocking doors and doing phone banks to really make sure that people know who I am, they know why I'm running, and they can connect with me as much personally, because it should be the people's house, and it should be about showing up for people as a representative. Unfortunately, my opponent has not agreed to debate me and has yet to agree to a single forum. And so we will still be doing those forums without him. And we'll be highlighting the fact that I have the courage to actually represent people, whether or not they agree with me, and continue doing public events like that. Because when I'm in Congress, too, I've taken a pledge that I will continue hosting town halls and be there to be on call for the people of my district.
It doesn't look like there's been much in the way of polling in this race. And, so I spent a lot of time looking at models, things like 538, and, they make these predictions, but it's not based on much of anything. So what is your sense kind of on the ground of the state of the race?
Yeah, so we have done two sets of internal polling. In our first polling, we were down by 4, and then in our second set of internal polling, we were up by 2, but they were both essentially in the statistical margin. And a lot of it was folks that are, supporting a Democrat generically. But we know that our message from our polling is resonating, that, my experience as a VA doctor, my experience on issues of clean water. Unfortunately, I graduated high school in Flint, Michigan. So I am personally connected to an issue of water contamination as we're dealing with this in our district. That's really meaningful for people. And unfortunately, my opponent, climate change is fueling superstorms like what we're dealing with right now. And he is one of the only coastal reps that's pro-offshore drilling. Essentially, everyone, Republican or Democrat on the coast, has been opposed to offshore drilling. And so it's really been connecting with people that I'm someone who cares about our quality and way of life and cares about our economy and jobs and clean industries like fishing and recreation and tourism that have been the lifeblood of our coastal communities. And so my sense is that people are really ready for a change. They're ready for more women in Congress. They're ready for people willing to work bipartisan. And, unfortunately, a lot of the pundits and 538 and stuff, many folks have not polled in a district like ours, but connecting with people matters. And my sense is that we have a real shot to win because we're running on those core things that people care about and that affect their pocketbooks and their daily lives.
Yeah, and it seems like in these kind of districts without a lot of polling that the turnout is really going to make a huge difference.
Absolutely it is, and I think people, when they feel really personally connected, they really want to vote. And I think the vote for change is going to be a strong one, because there are things that we used to be able to sort of accept certain things as American values, like, an independent judiciary, and that we were a land of, opportunity in which we were a melting pot. And now we have a lot of fundamental threats to the integrity of our democracy that I think people are recognizing. I think women are really motivated. A lot of our, unfortunately, minority and poorer communities have been devastated by these storms multiple times. And they recognize that, Washington politics as usual is not working for them. And so I think they're going to show up, my hope is, and vote for change, because my opponent's a career politician who funds his campaigns largely with corporate political action committee money and big polluter money, whereas I'm not accepting fossil fuel money. And we are primarily individual donation funded, and we get a lot of our money from inside our district. So that kind of buy-in from people that actually live here, I think, is going to be reflected in what we see and who shows up to vote on Election Day.
Is there anything else that you want to make sure we talk about?
No, I would love to, keep a lot of your listeners engaged with our campaign. Obviously, I'm really proud of what we're doing. And, to pull on people's heartstrings and raise awareness as to how important some of the work that I can bring to Washington is. My logo has 20 stars in it. When they look at it, it's drkyleforcongress.com. The reason there are 20 stars is to symbolize to me patients, veterans, soldiers, friends, and heroes, because we still lose an estimated 20 veterans a day to suicide in this country. And I want people to know about that, because I think that we have a sacred obligation to take care of those who bravely served. And the first bill that I worked on to prevent veteran suicide, one U.S. Senator blocked it, Tom Coburn from Oklahoma. And I fought back against Washington gridlock and obstruction. I think we need a new generation of leaders in Washington. And so I'd be proud to have the support of folks and know that I'm committed to making a change, because those who bravely served this country and wrote a blank check with their lives in service to this country don't deserve to be penny pinched. I think that, our seniors, our veterans, our kids, and our families deserve better leadership. And so I would love for people to go to drkyleforcongress.com and to send us any questions or thoughts and to stay engaged.
All right, excellent. We'll put a link for that up on our website as well. So thank you so much for speaking with me. I'm really excited about your campaign, and I'm looking forward to seeing more women in Congress and more doctors in Congress, definitely.
Thank you, Kelly. Me too.
I'm here in this segment with Mallory Hagan, who is running for Congress in the Alabama 3rd District. Hi, Mallory.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm great. I was just saying on Facebook, I've never before gotten to watch the talent portion of a Miss America pageant to prepare for an interview. So it's
well, I hope you were entertained.
I was. So let's start with a little bit of background. Tell me a little bit about who you are and why you're running for Congress this year.
Again, my name is Mallory Hagan, and I grew up in Alabama. My family's been in Alabama for 7 generations. My parents are from the Auburn area, where Auburn University is, and I grew up just a short distance down the road in a place called Opelika, really wonderful small town, very community-centric. And when I was 19, I sort of picked up and moved to New York. I just wanted to explore the world. I grew up dancing. My mom owns a dance studio. She's in her 25th year of being a small business owner. And so I had gone to New York before to dance, and I just really wanted to see what it was like to live there. So the deal was that I would take a semester off of school at Auburn and go live there for the fall. Well, that turned into 8 years of living in New York City. But when I moved there, I worked in restaurants, and ultimately I was looking to go to school in New York, and I had established residencies. So looking around at the schools, the Fashion Institute of Technology was an affordable option for me at that time. And I had an advertising and marketing degree. And so in order for me to pay for school, I got involved in the Miss America organization, which is something I had done when I was younger, like in my teen years. But in New York, it was a really great way for me to earn tuition dollars. So I competed in Miss New York 3 times. And those tuition dollars that I had for the Fashion Institute came from being first runner-up twice to Miss, and then 3rd time's a charm. I won and ultimately won Miss America. And so the Miss America organization was my first real toe dip into politics. Being Miss America, you are a national ambassador for Children's Miracle Network hospitals, but you also have a personal platform that you advocate for. And so as a teenager, it was arts education. And then I did a stint of being a Dove Campaign for Real Beauty ambassador, where I did self-esteem and body confidence workshops. And as I got older, I realized that I really wanted to talk about something that was a little closer to home for my family. And so as Miss America, I was an advocate for child abuse prevention and specifically child sexual abuse. So I worked with the National Children's Alliance and Prevent Child Abuse America and several organizations like Safe Horizon, and worked with Congress to restore federal funding for our child advocacy centers. And so that was when I really knew that I could make a difference by being vocal about something that mattered. And I've continued that work over the last couple of years. Moved back home to Alabama in 2016, started working for the news. I was a news anchor. And this past January, a group of people asked me if I would consider running for office, which seemed absurd. I was really, really humbled that not just 1 or 2 people, but seriously an entire group of people, the leader of Moms Demand Action here, a gentleman who's now running for school board, Adam Dortner, the Lee County Democratic Club. I mean, just all these people came together and collectively approached me. And they said, we think that you have the guts and the name recognition and the thick skin to pull this off. And so here I am all these months later, having been through this entire process with just, days until the election. And it seems crazy, but I'm glad I did it.
Alabama has been one of our favorite states this election cycle. We've talked to
Woohoo!
Tabitha Eisner and Deanna Klein, Peter Joffrion, along with some of the state candidates. And so we've been really excited about everything that's going on in Alabama. People seem really fired up there. So can you tell me a little bit about the 3rd district? What part of Alabama is this, and what's the energy look like there?
Sure. So the 3rd district is one of the larger geographical districts in Alabama, and we have all of the eastern border, like bumping up to Georgia. So we have the outskirts of Birmingham all the way over to Georgia and down through the Auburn-Opelika area where Auburn University is, and then over to Montgomery. So we have some pockets of really concentrated communities and neighborhoods, and then lots of our district is quite rural. Our average income is somewhere around $40,000, and we're quite diverse. And so it's been very interesting to, relearn some of these areas that I was absent from for quite some time. And it's also quite interesting, having grown up in the Auburn-Opelika area, which is one of our fastest growing cities, to sort of take myself out of this bubble that I grew up in and that I've known and really get to know these communities that are struggling up and down our district. But it's a wonderful place. We depend heavily on manufacturing, and the people are just really hardworking and really community centric. And it's a great place. I'm really proud of our district and what we're trying to do. And I think that people are very ripe for change. Our congressman has been in office for 16 years. And many people on both sides of the aisle feel as though that he is someone that they can't access, that he doesn't answer emails and he won't host town halls. And, unless you're putting money in his pocket, he's not interested in interacting with you. And that's the direct opposite of the campaign that I've run and the direct opposite of the type of representative that I will be.
And he won't debate you either.
No, and that seems to be the playbook this year across the board. Our governor is doing the same thing. We have a really great gubernatorial candidate, Walt Maddox, who has been asking for a debate with our governor. And same thing here in the 3rd district. Mike Rogers has said time and time again that debating me will only elevate my name recognition, and he's not interested in giving my campaign any credibility. But that's just silly. I mean, I've been on everything from MSNBC all the way to TMZ and anything in between. And so It's just an excuse that doesn't work for me. And I think that it's really insulting to the people of Alabama and specifically to his constituents that he doesn't really know who he works for.
Definitely. So I've been looking a little bit at the numbers in this district, and, of course, there's no real polling that I can see in the district, and the Cook rating is pretty Republican. It's been voting pretty Republican in presidential elections. As you noted, Mike Rogers has been in office for 16 years. But you mentioned it's so diverse, and, it's like 26% African American and 3% Hispanic. And it seems like the kind of district that the kind of election that Doug Jones pulled off, that, there could really be some room here.
Absolutely. And I think the thing to note when people say Alabama is red or this district is pretty Republican, there's been an attack on voting rights here in our state. And we're seeing that in Georgia. We're seeing it across the country. One of the things that Alabama did was pass the voter ID law and then subsequently close DMVs. And so, we've really been struggling to make sure that people's voting rights are protected. And so that's first and foremost. And we all know how voter suppression works and the communities that it impacts most. And so we've seen that across our district for sure. But the energy here is enthusiastic. One of the things that the Doug Jones race did was really organize our state Democratic parties. So our county parties are seeing membership growth every month. And people, because Doug Jones did pull out a win, know that it's possible. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is that, in the South, and maybe across the country, but very specifically where I grew up, it was you don't talk religion and you don't talk politics. And what we're seeing is that there are all these people who really are Democrats who have just sort of been in hiding because it's been so socially unacceptable to be one. And so Doug Jones' race really let people know and pulled some people out from underneath their shell a little bit. And they're like, oh, there are more people who think like me. Perhaps we might be in the majority if we just mobilize voters. And so there's a lot of energy in that direction. And the other thing that we're seeing here energy-wise is our young people. This district has 11 college campuses. We've got 2 HBCUs, Tuskegee University and Talladega College. Then we've got Auburn University, as I mentioned, and Jacksonville State, and then a lot of small community colleges in between. And these young voters have been energized and excited through things like March for Our Lives and the kids at Parkland. I think that they're watching and witnessing the rhetoric that's happening on both sides of the aisle in the last couple of years and realizing that their voice does matter and that they can make a difference if they get out and vote. So we've seen a lot of energy on our college campuses too, and that's what's most exciting to me, because when I made the decision to run, I said this will be a win-win no matter what. Even if I don't win, with the following that I've had and the name recognition that I had prior to even running, there are a lot of young eyes on me all the time. And so there's plenty of young people across this country who are watching this race, who are following my Instagram and looking at my Instagram stories. And many of them have reached out and said, because you're running for office, I'm inspired to run for city council, or I'm inspired to run for SGA, or whatever it may be. And that's what's most important here, is that this campaign and this election cycle inspires other young people, and specifically other young women, to get involved in this process.
Yeah, I think that's really excellent. And that's, we're seeing that with like the Taylor Swift post on Instagram, and suddenly 600,000 people registering to vote. So I think that's so important to sort of use that power when you have it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The attack on voting rights, I think, that's it's terrible. And it's a really big deal that we need to be working on as a country. And for anyone in Alabama who's listening, make sure you vote for friend of the podcast, Heather Milam, because clearly Alabama needs a new Secretary of State. So besides things like the issue of voter rights, what are some of the other issues that you think the people in your district are really concerned with and that you're focusing on in your campaign?
Sure. Well, I think this is across the country. People are very concerned about health care. The Affordable Care Act made premiums that much more for people who had health care and of course, afforded people who didn't have health care the ability to do so. And there's a lot that we need to do. But first and foremost, in the state of Alabama, we did not expand Medicaid. And while that's not something that I will have control over, should I win this election and go to Washington, it's something that I certainly can influence and have been talking about a lot. Our rural hospitals are closing left and right here in Alabama, and we are facing a real crisis by way of just access to health care at all. In our district, just this summer, Jacksonville State's hospital closed, and the people who live in that area where there's a college, there's a university, there are kids, they have 2 ambulances and a 45-minute drive to the nearest hospital. And so we're looking at that. That's a microcosm of what's happening across Alabama, and it's really terrifying. And then you add that, we've got the highest infant mortality rate. 9 out of 1,000 of our babies here in the state of Alabama die. And of course, the number is higher among African-American women. And so we're in a crisis, and we need people who are willing to work across the aisle. I think we need leadership that's willing to listen and really willing to be a part of moving forward and stopping the bleeding that we've got going on. And so that's the number one issue in our state. And second to that is our education. Alabama consistently ranks bottom 5, not only in healthcare, but also in education, government transparency, et cetera. In Alabama, we spend $4,000 less per student than the national average every year. And, that resonates when our kids graduate and they're not ready for college, or they graduate and they're not ready for the workforce. It hinders our economy here in the state, and it hinders our ability to grow. And so we've really got to focus on our education system here. And those are the top 2 issues that I think people, to be quite honest, are talking about across the country. And that just goes to show that we've got a lot of work to do by way of representatives and electing people who actually have the people's best interest at heart.
So we're just 3 weeks out from the election here. What are the kinds of things that you have planned to sort of round out this campaign and get to as many voters as possible?
Oh, goodness. We have all kinds of things planned. It's funny. I feel like I never stop moving. And I've, listened to y'all's podcast. I've heard every other candidate say the same thing. We're working 14-hour days, but I'm most excited that we've just had a huge presence around the district. So we've got a solid staff and team, and we are everywhere all at once. But we've also identified about 145,000 doors, and we are canvassing like it's nobody's business. And we're really working to get that face-to-face direct contact, because I think that's what's working. We've seen it in several other districts, and that's what people crave. I can't tell you how many times I've knocked on a door and people have said, no one has knocked on my door that's run for Congress in years. And so, that really resonates here. And then on top of that, the thing that I think that our campaign has done differently is utilize social media and video content in a way that we haven't seen too much of in the past. We release 4 or 5, maybe 6 videos in a week, and we're letting people know where we are and what we're doing, where we're going. We've got policy videos coming out. And so we're really targeting those college campuses and making sure those students are A, registered to vote, but B, inspired to vote. And the last thing that we're doing is making sure that every person has not 1, not 2, but 3 or 4 postcards in the mail. Direct mail, I think, is a great way to reach voters, but often can cost quite a bit of money. And so we have created postcard parties and I've seen this across the country, but postcard parties are we're getting ready for one here in our office this evening. We have people coming in, and we're seeing that we can do 2,000, 3,000 postcards in a night. And that's the type of thing that makes a difference when reaching voters.
Yeah, I like all the new ideas that campaigns have this year. And, you have your staff page on your website, and your staff looks very young. And I think that that's really exciting to see sort of all this new stuff coming up. And, we're not going to just keep doing politics the same way forever.
Yeah, one of the things I am most proud of, a decision that I made, and I do have a media consultant, and I think that having those people surrounding your campaign that really know what they're doing is really important. But one of my staff members, Chad, I pulled him on. He follows me around with a camera, and just that creation of video content has been a standout to people who aren't really familiar with politics. They love getting our weekly update where I tell them everywhere we went and show them the people that we interacted with. And I really think that we're just in this wave of social media such that you can't wait to pay $30,000 for a commercial. You've got to keep people engaged throughout the entire process. And I'm really excited that our campaign has been able to do that because I think it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, I'm on a lot of candidate email lists, a lot. And, 95% of the content I get on these emails is, please give money, please give money, please give money. So, I think it probably is really exciting for people to say, oh, she's telling me something other. I mean, sure, you're also asking for money, but something else about what you've been doing. And so that's really great. So speaking of asking for money, on your website, this is the first time I've ever seen this on a candidate's site. You actually, one of the pieces of swag you have is a necklace. That's lovely.
Yeah.
I was inspired by one myself, and it just came the other day in the mail. So
hey, thank you. I'm glad.
So is that a designer that you know?
Well, actually, Emma Jane's Designs they're a local jeweler here in town, and Emma reached out to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about making a piece of jewelry specifically for your campaign. People always talk about blue dot. Would you be interested in me doing a blue dot necklace? And of course I am. Absolutely. And so, she created a necklace for our campaign. It's quite simple and cute. And I think it's a really interesting way to sort of subliminally let someone else know that you're a blue dot, maybe here in the red state, but also across the country. And she's been a great supporter. And those necklaces have flown off the shelves. We've done several orders of them, and I think it's just been a great way to cross-promote something local and a small business here where I'm from in the Auburn-Opelika area, and also generate some income for our campaign. So we still have some. If anybody's interested, you can find them on our website. That's hagenforhouse.com.
That's excellent. I love it. And I'm definitely not a blue dot. I am surrounded by lots and lots of blue on the south side of Chicago.
You are.
Nonetheless, I love the necklace. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure we talk about?
I think it's so important throughout this election cycle that people are really paying attention to where their representatives' money comes from. One of the things that has been the most alarming to learn in this process is A, just how much money is in politics, and B, where it comes from. And I'm really proud to say that my campaign, over 90% of my donations come from people, individuals. But there are tons of politicians out there that's not the case. And my opponent's one of them. Over 60% of his campaign finance comes from corporations, and most of those corporations are in some way tied to defense. And my opponent sits on the Armed Services Committee. So therefore, he directly benefits through his campaign by the decisions that he makes sitting on that committee. And that's just but a microcosm of what's happening across our country. And I really implore people to look into that, see who your representatives are taking money from, and how does that impact the decisions that they make? And are they making decisions for you? Or are they making decisions for those corporations that are funding them? I think now more than ever, we have got to work on getting big money and dark money out of politics. I'm really proud to be endorsed by In Citizens United, but it's so much more than that. And I think that that's the first step to restoring what's left of our democracy. And it starts by people really paying attention and educating themselves on who they're voting for and where their money comes from. I just think that's so important in this time frame, and we've got to be paying attention to it.
Absolutely. So if our individual citizens would like to help your campaign, how can they do that?
I would love help on our campaign. We need help from near and far, but you can get all the information you need on our website. It's hagenforhouse.com. That's also our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Everything is Hagen for House, and we would love your help. You can donate. You can sign up to volunteer there, and we need phone bankers. And phone bankers, that can happen from your kitchen or your living room, or you can have a party. We need help from every corner of our country, and we would be very grateful for it here in Alabama because, as we mentioned earlier, there is energy here, and we can see change, but we just need a little bit of help.
All right. Excellent. Well, Mallory, thank you so much for talking to me. This was really fun, and I think Alabama's going to shock some people this year. I'm really hoping.
Thank you so much for having me, and I agree. I absolutely do, and I look forward to November 6th and a shock in the world when it happens.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.